the biggest problem with Ascent before was that as attackers, when we're trying to default and take B main, when we were just getting spammed by the Odin and the Sova, it was so hard to, and that's why it was such a defense-sided map, is because it was so difficult for attackers to take this space in such a small choke based on how easy it was for defense to hold it. Okay, so now that they've added the reinforced wall, it makes whatever Sentinel, and even just as a team, if we're just defaulting into B main to get the orb, it makes it a lot easier for us to play for this space. You have your basic 3 lanes for each map. You've got kind of a midway point that you can split into both sites, right? And you've got your way that you could be flooding out, but you've also, as a defender, have kind of multiple ways that you can be retaking the site, which provide multiple avenues other than just like flanking, right? So there's a lot of decent variance for the map, even though there are only really a couple different ways that you can play it. Now with Teo coming into the meta and Yoru seeing a lot more prevalence and play, the meta has changed a little bit, but it hasn't really changed that much. Like generally, you're still gonna see a lot of like Jet, Sova, KO for the most part. Um, you'll see variances of different initiators. Like my team's been practicing with Breach and Teo, which has been a good pairing. Um, but as well, I've seen some teams that are doing like Teo and KO, right? Some teams, and I've practiced with Sova and Fade. There's a bunch of different initiators that you can do, but it's important that you're still trying to use them in similar ways because just how the map plays, okay? So the more important thing is sticking to what you guys are comfortable on, because at the end of the day, like I said, there's only a couple ways that you can play Ascent, but there are a couple different ways that you can play your agent based on the composition that you're playing with, based on the team that you're with. So you want to pick comfort over technically meta. But the meta agents are pretty easy to get used to. So like the basic meta comp, right, is Sova, KO, KJ, and Omen. Did that work? There we go. KJ and Omen, right? This is the overall base comp. But some teams have just swapped a Cypher in there, right? They'll do a Cypher instead. And then recently they've been doing Yoru, Cypher, and Deadlock instead of the KO, right? They'll do something like this. Or even like G2, they were running like the Vise and the KO. Or sorry, the Vise and the Deadlock. And they were doing Sova. Like that. Actually, yeah, I think they were doing the Sova. So it's like it's different, but it's still very, very much the same in terms of how they want to play. They're playing this comp because of how you want to play Ascent. It focuses on the priorities for this map. So let's just picture. I'll just go through kind of the default setup if we're playing a default comp here. Okay, so it'd be something like this. Phil, go away. Okay. You could put your turret like this for getting B main info, or you could put it like this if you want. You could watch for both. You could put your alarm bot for mid, or your jet could walk down mid if you wanted to. You could do like a microwave setup. Sentinel player, you could do like something like this where they can't get down lane or anything like that. Something where you're able to, like, again, 2-for-1 value on your turret, kind of, or like how you're placing your Yuto. Okay, so generally you'll have a setup kind of like this, where at the beginning your jet can either be peeking mid from grass or like mid one, and I'll just tell you guys right now how you guys call this and this and this. Okay, yes, it's mid, but we're gonna number it. Mid 1, mid 2, mid 3, okay? So that way when you're telling your smokes player, hey, I want to work mid, but throw a smoke for me. And your smokes player's like, where mid do you want the smoke? Mid 1, mid 2, or mid 3, okay? And that's all you gotta say, and then your smokes player is either gonna throw it for one of those 3 spots, okay? Just like that. So yeah, so default setup at the start of the round, your jet can kind of get information bottom mid or get mid like kind of tiles, especially if we're saving up for an op or saving up for an outlaw, right? Because that's very viable on this map. Once you have an outlaw or an op, you can change and you can swing into A main, you could swing into B main. You could swing into B main if you don't have an op, but ideally we want to get maximum value from our KJ, right? So if you're swinging at the same spot that our turret is looking, well, then her turret doesn't need to be there. And again, that's completely fine. You can swing that, but now your KJ just needs to swap their setup a little bit, right? Put your turret to pick up mid, so now we can give up mid because our jet wants to work into B main. Or you could even move over to A, right? If we want to be aggressive on B main, our Sentinel, we could move over to A. And it could be Cypher, right? We can be playing with a Cypher instead of a KJ. And in that case, um, you just move your cam around differently, right? Like if you're just peeking into B main, you might put your trips a little bit deeper, put your cam in mid, for example, instead of B main, or just something like that where you can change it up based on how your jet player wants to play. But that's kind of how like B side works. And then I'll say as well, in the importance of maintaining our main space, once it goes quiet, we need to get information. And it's similar across every other map that we've played against. But on Ascent, more importantly, if they take A main from us, the reaction needs to be, okay, get info in B. If they take B from us, we need to get info at A. Okay? That for the IGLs,
Yep.
that's how it needs to work. You need to get info on the other side of the map to see if it's just a lurk or if it's actually going to be a full commitment. And now, depending on how they react in mid with their util, like I said, you can throw util mid, you can kind of wait, but you don't, just because they're taking mid doesn't mean we have to fight them in mid, because they have to come into tree and they have to come up into market and like pass these 2 spots here. So as long as we're holding where they can be going once they have mid, then we can just kind of hold for that. Like mid isn't as important to defense as you guys think it is. All you need to know is kind of, okay, where are they trying to go from mid? But we can get a really good idea of that based on what they're doing in A main and what they're doing at B main, right? So trying to keep attention to that. And I'll show a clip here. Goes on. So they're playing a double sentinel comp, which nowadays is a lot more common with the deadlock buffs and things like that. So what they're choosing to do is have Cypher over on B with the Sova, Jet in mid, and then Deadlock and Omen on A. Like I said, you want to have your harder site anchors over on A because it's much harder to take A when you have site anchors. And it is the same for B as well, but it's a little bit different. But we'll see how this round plays out.
Someone down. I think it's really important for her confidence that she finds some kind of a 1v1, sit someone down early on in this half, get that energy, get that mojo back.
Number 5 and 13 for the star player from FlyQuest. And no one in mid.
Islanded. No one gonna help her. But she's going for a creep with this drone out. It sees one player, and they get the pick over on A. Dodo with the crunch down. Now just means FlyQuest are running away with this.
3 players in main left.
Tagged.
I'll point this out as well. You see how even though they don't see anyone in mid, they have the deadlock wall on A, and the Jet definitely saw more than one other person kind of be main. The deadlock and the Omen are not over rotating, right? That's what I mean by like you want to have your more like anchor players more on A because you're most of the time gonna have three people closer on this B side anyway. Where if they do have a last minute change of mind and they want to run through mid or whatever, if we're over rotated off A, it's very difficult. So trust our teammates especially, and the way that you guys should be playing your B protocol is if they're running you down on B and you have the time, all you want to do, especially if you're a Sova player, you want to run into the back boathouse and just if you have your dart up, you want to dart against like the market wall or dart like front sight or anything like that, and you just play spam. Because even your sentinel, like your sentinel or your Sova, it's really important that you make yourselves hard to kill, or not necessarily. Yeah, make yourselves hard to kill, but also try to make them really work for that site. Because if they don't clear you guys back site properly, you can literally 2v5 them, or even like 1v3, and like like there are five people running at you, but one person gets three because you're just finessing back and forth or like bob and weaving. Like being in that position as defense is very strong, and providing util to help them is even stronger.
Maybe a star to step up for Shopify. More can be the one. Clone's good. That sets Sarah up for a
See, like just like that. So yes, the Cypher, if they had tried to get out, they probably would have died. But they're also not afraid to just run on site because Dodo in this case has a cross. Like they're able to kind of play off of each other. And Cypher also has a trip on lane, which helps. But the Cypher's running to back site because they know that in a 3v5 especially, or sorry, in a 4v3 especially, as long as she can make herself hard to kill and not an easy target, she can buy time for her team to kind of rotate over.
kill. Dodo not. You were talking about her needing to heat up, and this is her chance, her round to do so. Has the hero rifle, dashes into sight. Defense onto Starbound is good.
Saundra caught one.
3v2, and that's a player in jail. Sarah's being dragged away, and that's the spike. Yoinked all the way into market. Annoying spots ahead. Can't get it. And that's
So yeah, they don't over-rotate, but they're very quick to reacting once their team says, okay, they're committing to B. Okay, now we can rotate, we can re-clear mid a little bit. And like I mentioned a little bit at the beginning, like now with the updates, some of the changes to some of the agents, like Sova, KO, Teo, they're all still very strong initiators, and can help with just overall really help and provide value for our duelists and for our execs. But as you can see, both of these comps, they're running double sentinel, right? So they're still very, and this is before Deadlock changes, right? This is 5 months ago. So this is before Deadlock even got her buff. So the Deadlock now provides really good value for traps and good defensive ability with the regeneration. So if you guys want to run one initiator, you guys are more than welcome to, right? It's just all, and you can choose whichever one you want. It just all depends. So we'll talk about attack really quick. So the complete inverse of attack is while defense wants to maintain the main control, it's really important as attackers that we are trying to deny defense from taking our main control, right? The biggest problem with Ascent before was that as attackers, when we're trying to default and take B main, when we were just getting spammed by the Odin and the Sova, it was so hard to, and that's why it's such a defense sided map, is because it was so difficult for attackers to take this space in such a small choke based on how easy it was for defense to hold it. Okay, so now that they've added the reinforced wall, it makes whatever sentinel, and even just as a team, if we're just defaulting into being main to get the orb, it makes it a lot easier for us to play for this space. Okay, so just like I was saying, as defense wants this space, we really want it too. And if we can deny defense from taking this space from us, then it gives us a lot of options, right? We can leave a deposit, we could leave one person behind to listen for rotates and catch late lurks while the rest of us are defaulting across the map. But it also provides us the option to like come back, right? Like that person who's chilling there, lurking, like let's say we're just running one sentinel, we're running default comp. The default is probably gonna look something like this. I'd even do something like that, maybe. So we've got our Cypher kind of lurking up B main because the reinforced walls, we know he's not going to get spammed, so he can take his time, he can do whatever he wants. And then we've got some info mid, right? Whether it's a dart to see if maybe there's a jet bottom mid or something like that. If our KO has a knife lineup for market, they can throw a knife lineup and we can kind of clear all of mid with these two pieces of utility, right? Like the Sova dart clears all of this and even some of this if you hit it on the right corner of the wall, right? And then your KO knife is going to clear all of this, right? So you can clear all of mid with two pieces of rechargeable utility if you're playing the default comp. That's why it's so good. But this is kind of how you default, because like I said, defense, you want to get kind of control of this bottom part. But if off the rip, if we can take B main and mid off the rip, and all you're doing is fighting for A man, like I said, it gives us a lot of options, right? We can do mid lurk, we can just decide to hit B if we wanted to, right? So we want to try to pressure the mains and try to pull rotations if possible, especially if they're a quick rotation team. And if we're playing against Sentinels, we want to try to default and break the trips. Okay, if we can find them, if we can find out where that Sentinel is. Yeah, we want to try to find out where our Sentinel is, or that Sentinel is if possible. Break the trips if we're flooding in, so that we don't get spammed or kill tripped or anything like that. And even if we're playing against a KJ, we want to try to default break the KJ util. So if there's a turret right here or a alarm bot here, turret here, our Cypher has got to swing to break that turret. Okay, we've got to work bottom mid or use like a shock dart, right, and break that alarm bot. Now our KJ has no info on mid and B main. Boom! Now we get our our two choke points for free, right? Exactly what I was talking about. That's why a lot of teams play KJ, because you can control two of the things that you need to control with one agent. But if we break that, now they've got to commit a body, they've got to commit a person, and move the overall default around in order to make up for the